The High Sovereign Council of Zirath had never known fear. For centuries their dominion had spread across the Orion Arm, swallowing lesser species with ease. Their fleets were vast, their technology unmatched. To the Zirathi, war was an equation, every battle a predetermined calculation leading to inevitable victory. Until now, the chamber was silent, a rare occurrence among the warlords and strategists gathered within the obsidian walls of the great conclave hall. A massive holo display hovered above them, replaying the impossible. At first, the footage seemed familiar, a small human detachment hopelessly outnumbered by the superior Zirathi legionnaires on Veltraxis IV, a vital world in the latest annexation campaign. The battle should have been over in minutes. The humans had no orbital support, no reinforcements, and no chance. Yet, what the warlords were watching defied all military logic. The humans did not retreat. They did not surrender. They adapted. The display showed grainy footage of human soldiers moving through the smoke-filled ruins of Outpost Bastion, a site that should have been obliterated. Zirathi battle drones lay in twisted heaps, their internal systems fried. Legionnaire corpses were scattered across the field, their once impenetrable battle armor riddled with wounds. A Zirathi strategist scoffed. They should not have won. The holoscreen zoomed in on one particular human, his armor scorched, his face partially hidden behind a cracked visor. He was laughing, not out of arrogance, not out of madness. It was a challenge, as if the sheer impossibility of their survival had only emboldened them. One warlord leaned forward. They tampered with our weapons. They were cornered. Worse, another strategist muttered. They used our own battlefield codes against us. The Supreme Overlord, a towering figure of molten black exoskeletal armor, narrowed his slitted golden eyes. They are not warriors. They are something else. For the first time in Zirathi history, the predators of the galaxy felt an unfamiliar sensation. Doubt. The Xelari Dominion had conquered 100 worlds, their war fleets stretching across the stars like an unbreakable chain. Their warriors, towering reptilian beings with armored exoskeletons, were bred for combat, their military doctrine designed around absolute domination. They had crushed empires, enslaved species, and rewritten the fate of civilizations. And now they faced humanity, a species they had grossly underestimated. Veltraxis IV was supposed to fall within hours. The Zirathi had deployed a full legionnaire battalion, reinforced by orbital bombardments and autonomous war drones. Against them stood a mere 2,000 human soldiers, remnants of the Terran Expeditionary Force, stranded on the colony world after their fleet was annihilated in a surprise attack. From a strategic standpoint, the outcome had been clear. The humans had no escape, no reinforcements, and no hope. And yet, 6 days later, Veltraxis IV had not fallen. Every Zirathi victory was met with unexplained human countermeasures. Their war machines malfunctioned, their drones turned against them, their encrypted battle codes somehow intercepted. It was as if the humans had anticipated every move, setting traps that forced the legionnaires into relentless attritional warfare. For the first time in history, an invasion had stalled. The Supreme Overlord Vorix Khan stood in the center of the High Council chamber, watching the battle unfold on the holo-display. His golden eyes glowed with irritation. "Explain." General Zarkul, one of the Dominion's most decorated war commanders, cleared his throat. "The humans have adapted far beyond our expectations. They are using irregular warfare, setting up diversions, hacking our systems, and they are primitives," one of the warlords growled, slamming his clawed fist on the table. "We have broken species with centuries of warcraft. What makes these creatures different?" A new projection filled the air. Outpost Bastion, the charred ruins of a once prosperous human colony, now turned into the site of a desperate last stand. There, in the midst of the destruction, stood Commander Elias Rourke, the man who had become the bane of the Xerathi war machine. Rourke had no illusions of survival. His forces were exhausted, outnumbered, and running out of supplies. Yet his expression in the footage showed none of that. He grinned, standing atop a pile of broken Xerathi battle drones, holding the severed arm of a fallen legionnaire as a mocking war trophy. The humans should have been afraid. Instead, they were laughing. General Zarkul motioned toward the projection. This is what we failed to account for: human defiance. Even when cornered, they refused to acknowledge defeat. Supreme Overlord Vorix Khan narrowed his slitted eyes. Their resistance is futile, and yet, Zarkul muttered, they have cost us more legionnaires in 6 days than in a decade of conquest. The holodisplay shifted again. A squad of humans in scavenged armor charged a Xerathi formation, dodging plasma fire while using improvised explosives fashioned from enemy ordnance. A Xerathi tactician sneered. They are reckless. They are adaptable, Zarkul corrected. We have crushed civilizations before, but no species has ever fought like them. They are unpredictable. Another display appeared, this time showing the aftermath of a sabotage operation. Human forces had infiltrated a Xerathi forward base, hacking into their encrypted communications and broadcasting false orders, turning legionnaires against their own commanders. Warlord Vexen let out a low growl. They are using deception, Zarkul nodded grimly. Yes, they are fighting a war not for territory, not for glory, but for survival. That makes them more dangerous than any foe we have faced. The Supreme Overlord turned to his strategists. Tell me, what is their weakness? Silence. For the first time, the Xerathi had no answer. The war on Veltraxis IV was reaching a breaking point. The Xerathi had overwhelming numbers. The humans had desperation and ingenuity. One side was fighting to conquer. The other side was fighting because they had no other choice, and that made all the difference. The war for Veltraxis IV had become something the Xerathi had never experienced before, a war of attrition that they weren't winning. By all logic, the planet should have been conquered days ago. The Xerathi Legionnaire battalions had overwhelmed planetary defenses in the opening strike, taking out orbital stations, wiping out human air support, and crippling their command network. On any other world, this would have been the end. The species that resisted them always broke quickly. Some surrendered, some were exterminated, but none had ever done what the humans were doing now. Instead of accepting defeat, the humans had turned their own destruction into an advantage. Commander Elias Rourke stood at the edge of a shattered skyscraper in the ruins of New Halcyon, the capital city-turned-war zone. His men were exhausted. Supplies were critically low. Ammunition was being rationed to a handful of bullets per soldier. And yet, they were still standing. Rourke scanned the battlefield through a cracked visor. Xerathi legionnaires moved in organized phalanxes, their towering forms gleaming under the harsh red sky. Their war machines stomped through the wreckage, scanning for human survivors. The Xerathi still believed they were fighting an ordinary war. They had no idea they had been dragged into something else entirely. Rourke tapped his comms. "You sure this will work, Flynn?" A voice crackled over the radio. Lieutenant Erin Flynn, the team's lead engineer. "Not sure about anything these days, sir, but if they built it, we can break it." That was the key difference. The Xerathi relied on superior firepower. The humans relied on breaking the rules. For 6 days, human saboteurs had been infiltrating enemy encampments, planting false command data into Xerathi targeting systems. Result: the Xerathi were firing on their own forces. Inside a fortified Xerathi war chamber, General Zarkul watched as his forces annihilated their own battalions. One moment, an elite legionnaire division had been preparing to storm the human stronghold. The next, They had opened fire on each other, caught in a cascade of hacked targeting systems and falsified distress signals. The humans had turned Xerathi efficiency into a liability. Warlord Vexen bared his fangs. They are tricksters. This is dishonorable. Zarkal's claws dug into the table. They are winning. For the first time, the Xerathi forces were not fighting a weaker species. They were hunting ghosts, shadows that struck from nowhere and disappeared. Realizing the unconventional nature of human warfare, the Xerathi adjusted. They deployed hunter-seeker drones, specialized in tracking biometric heat signatures. They deployed energy-dampening fields to prevent hacking attempts. They shut down their automated targeting systems, forcing their warriors to rely on manual combat. For any other species, this would have been the turning point. For the humans, it was just another challenge. Rourke crouched behind the ruins of a broken transport, watching as Xerathi seeker drones scoured the area. "All right, boys, Plan B." A squad of Terran commandos emerged from the rubble, each one carrying jury-rigged Xerathi rifles, hacked, rewired, and turned against their original owners. The humans couldn't match Xerathi technology, so instead, they stole it. The drones registered friendly forces, ignoring the humans who had hijacked Xerathi biometric signals. Within moments, the Seekers were reprogrammed against their own creators. From the safety of his warship, Supreme Overlord Vorix Khan watched in horror as his own forces were being annihilated by their own machines. By the seventh day, the Xerathi were no longer just fighting humans. They were fighting doubt. Xerathi legionnaires, once fearless in battle, hesitated before storming human-held territories. What if the distress signal was a trap? What if the supply caches had been rigged to detonate? Every advance cost them dearly. Every engagement drained more resources than the humans should have been capable of. On the ground, a young Xerathi soldier, Valzeth, son of a high-ranking noble, trembled as he watched the aftermath of yet another failed assault. The humans had left a message scrawled in Xerathi blood on a broken war mech. "We learn faster than you do." Valzeth turned to his commander. "Sir, what if we can't win?" The legionnaire slapped him across the face with a clawed hand. "We are Xerathi. We do not doubt." But as they turned toward the battlefield, they saw what remained of their front lines, and for the first time they began to doubt. By the 9th day, the Xerathi no longer sought victory, they sought to escape. Their high command prepared an emergency withdrawal, but before they could evacuate, a final coded message was transmitted across every Xerathi comm channel. It was Commander Elias Rourke's voice. "You thought you had us cornered." His voice was calm, cold, confident. "You thought we were trapped. You thought we were primitive. You thought we'd break." A pause. Then a chilling laugh. "You should have killed us when you had the chance." Then came the explosions. The human resistance had detonated every Xerathi fuel cache in the capital. The Xerathi retreat turned into a massacre. The hunters had become the hunted. The Xelari Dominion had never before ordered a full planetary retreat. But on the 10th day of the siege of Veltraxis IV, Supreme Overlord Vorix Khan gave the command. It was not a tactical withdrawal, it was an act of desperation. The Xerathi had come to exterminate humanity's resistance. Now they were fleeing for their lives. Inside the wreckage of New Halcyon, Commander Elias Rourke stood on a ruined balcony, watching as Xerathi warships ignited their thrusters, attempting to lift off before their entire ground force was wiped out. He tapped his comms. "Flynn, is our parting gift ready?" Lieutenant Erin Flynn's voice crackled through. "You bet. Once those bastards hit orbit, they're in for a surprise." Rourke grinned. "Light 'em up." As the first Xerathi warship breached the upper atmosphere, a chain reaction of explosions erupted along its hull, EMP bombs, planted by human saboteurs days before. One by one, Zirathi warships lost power, spiraling out of control. Some crashed into one another, others plummeted back toward the surface, engulfed in flames. The Supreme Overlord watched in horror as his once invincible fleet was torn apart by a species that had been written off as primitive prey. The Zirathi did not just lose a battle, they lost the illusion of superiority. As the Zirathi fleet crumbled, Supreme Overlord Voryx Khan refused to retreat. The massive Zirathi warlord stepped onto the battlefield, his exoskeletal armor gleaming in the firelight, his warblade humming with energy. And Rourke was waiting for him. The two leaders locked eyes. "You are an anomaly," Voryx Khan growled, stepping forward. "No species has ever withstood us for this long." Rourke smirked, gripping his plasma knife. "We're full of surprises." Voryx Khan lunged, swinging his warblade in a deadly arc. Rourke barely dodged, rolling under the massive strike, sparks flying as the blade carved through the wreckage behind him. The human was smaller, weaker, but faster. Voryx Khan attacked again, slashing wildly, his strikes shaking the ground. Rourke evaded, using his size to his advantage. The fight was not about strength, it was about who could outthink the other, and Rourke knew something Voryx Khan didn't. As the Overlord prepared for another swing, Rourke suddenly lunged forward, not at his enemy, but at the control panel of a ruined Zirathi battle tank. With a single button press, the hacked targeting system activated. A dozen Zirathi turrets turned their sights on their own leader. Voryx Khan's eyes widened. Rourke grinned. "Like I said, should have killed us when you had the chance." A deafening blast of plasma fire erupted, engulfing the Supreme Overlord. The last Zirathi warship exploded in the sky. On the ground, Zirathi soldiers threw down their weapons. Some tried to flee, others simply surrendered, their once iron discipline shattered. Human forces emerged from the ruins, watching the once invincible enemy kneel before them. Commander Rourke exhaled, wiping sweat and blood from his face. "It's over," Flynn muttered beside him. Rourke shook his head, watching the burning wreckage of the Zirathi fleet. "No," he murmured. "This was just the first war." Because now the Zirathi knew the truth. Humanity was not prey, humanity was not weak. Humanity was something far worse. They were a problem, and problems don't go away. The smoke still hung heavy over the ruins of New Halcyon, casting an eerie glow as the fires of war slowly faded. The battle was over, but the echoes of it would ripple across the stars. Commander Elias Rourke stood atop a wrecked Zirathi dropship, his gaze locked onto the horizon where the last of the Zirathi escape vessels had vanished into the void. They had run, not retreated, run, and that, more than the bodies littering. The battlefield, more than the shattered war machines, more than the prisoners kneeling before them, was the real victory. Light years away, the surviving Zirathi warlords gathered in silence, staring at the holographic projection of Veltraxis IV. The world was not under their control. It was not burning under their flag. It was still human. This was unthinkable. A new message intercepted from human transmissions played before them. It was Rourke's voice. "You sent your best. You sent your armies. You sent your fleets. You thought you had us cornered." A pause. "Now you're the ones running." The chamber erupted in chaos. Some warlords snarled for retribution. Others remained silent, fear creeping into their cold-blooded veins. They had believed humanity was weak. Now they knew the truth. They had made an enemy that would never stop fighting, and one thing was certain: humanity would remember this war. Back on Veltraxis IV, the survivors of the Terran Expeditionary Force gathered in what was left of their base. There was no celebration, no grand speeches, just silent exhaustion, the weight of survival pressing down on their shoulders. Lieutenant Erin Flynn slumped against a makeshift barricade, bloodied but alive. "I still don't get it," she muttered. "How the hell did we win?" Rourke stared at the wreckage, at the alien corpses, the burning war machines, the once mighty invaders who had thought themselves untouchable. "We didn't win," he murmured. "We just proved we're too much trouble to kill." Flynn let out a breathless laugh. "That's it? That's all we got?" Rourke smirked. "That's all we need." The war for Veltraxis IV was over, but humanity had done something far greater than just hold the line. They had rewritten their place in the galaxy. No longer were they just another species to be conquered. Now they were something else entirely, a force to be feared, a problem that no empire could ignore. And as the stars burned in the night sky, Rourke knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning, the end. "Would you like any refinements, or is this ready to go?"